What is up, scholars? Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be looking at some of my theories on Joyboy, more specifically Joyboy, Nika, and Luffy, kind of the connections, what we know about them, what it all could mean, what are some possibilities, what are the connections, and what are some possibilities for the end. So I had it on my computer. I have about 9 pages worth of notes. I mean, it's excessive. I really went all out on this. We have a lot to talk about. I'm going to be splitting this into kind of some sections. So I'm going to do a portion talking about Joyboy, like who is Joyboy. I'll be talking about Luffy, like who is Luffy, and another section about Nika, who is Nika. And then I'm going to take some time to talk about the fight between Luffy and Kaido and kind of analyze that, put it into place with all these 3 subsections. And then as a final part, we're going to be talking about what will happen in the final fight, or my thoughts on it. So, since this is a theory video, fully a theory video, y'all already know what has to happen. I'm getting the tinfoil hat back on. This, ooh my, looks as bad as I remember it looking, but that's fine. It's not supposed to look good. It's a tinfoil hat. We're fine. I will be referring to my notes quite a bit because I have it all sectioned out here. But we're going to talk about this. We're going to discuss all of these different theories, all of my different theories, and it's just going to be fun. We're going to have fun with it. But this, after I did all this, this is kind of where my head's at with the whole Joyboy, Nika, Luffy situation as I'm in Egghead. I am not fully caught up with Egghead, so please do not put any spoilers down in the comments for anything I don't talk about that gets discussed in Egghead, perhaps. So please don't do that, because I would be very sad and disappointed to be spoiled after I'm so close to being caught up. If I, like, theories are theories, they will constantly be changing, so my theories could change after I get caught up. They could not change after I get caught up, who knows. But first things first, who is Joyboy? What do we know about Joyboy? Joyboy, from what we know, was a person who lived 800 years ago during the Void Century, and from what we can tell, he was somebody who fought against the world government. Now, the world government, of course, has covered up that Void history, and it's been erased. Or Void Century, it's the blank history. One and the same, I guess. We know, based on the information we gained from Eni's lobby during Robin's flashback of Ohara, we know that there used to be a kingdom that existed back in the day, and this has already kind of been confirmed with some recent discoveries in Egghead. There was a kingdom, and it was a kingdom that the government is trying to hide, so most likely it was a kingdom that rebelled against the world government when the world government was being founded, when they were forming, because I don't think they were actually the world government at first. They were just an opposing force that became the world government to hide the Void Century, the blank history, in order to establish this government setting. It's just one theory. Joyboy, from what we can assume from this, it was a part of that kingdom, and either part of that kingdom or at least part of the rebellion that fought back against what we know as the world government. We also know that Joyboy is a friend of Zunisha. Zunisha and Joyboy were friends back in the day, and Zunisha has already lived for at least 1,000 years, so he could have seen Joyboy when he was younger. It could have been a little bit older. Joyboy could have been from a different race than a human and had a longer lifespan, so he could have been maybe 100 or so years old as well. We don't know. But Zunisha has long awaited the return of Joyboy. Zunisha and Joyboy were they committed crimes against the world government, and Zunisha has been punished for it. That's one of the reasons why he's been walking as long as he has. But the way he's able to break that whenever Joyboy is potentially returning, with Momo being friends with Momo, that has me curious about a few things as well. Because Zunisha was willing to break that punishment to aid Momo and Wano because of their bond, and because I just feel that Zunisha knew something was coming. Zunisha knew a change was gonna come, something was going to happen, and he wanted to be there. And when he heard that drums of liberation, that's why he got so excited. He's like, oh, this is what I've been waiting for. Another thing about Joyboy that we know, Joyboy is also known as the Warrior of Liberation. I believe that's one of the nicknames that was given to him. It's also a nickname given to the sun god, Nika. From this, we can kind of assume that they're synonymous with each other in a way. Like, yes, they're two separate things, but they're one and the same in a sense. I have a theory on that. I'm going to get to it in a little bit. I'm going to get to it when we talk about Nika. We can assume Nika was either a real person or a one of the gods and the sins and that exists in this world, and was synonymous with Joyboy due to the gum fruit, or the human fruit model Nika. Freedom is a huge part of Joyboy's nature. And I'm already giving some tie-ins to Nika here, but I'm just trying to establish a few things. Nika is also known to make people laugh and to make people smile. Nika is also huge on the whole freedom aspect. So there's already some existing connections between the two from what we've seen. But Joyboy specifically has been someone that the world government has been afraid of. We've seen it in the idea that the poneglyphs have always been trying to like be covered up. They can't learn what language the poneglyphs are written in, because Joyboy's name is written on these poneglyphs. We've seen it in Fishman Island, and it comes up again in other parts of this story. Joyboy is a figure that has been recorded in history during that blank century that the world government doesn't want anybody to know about. What we can assume, or what I can assume at least, is that whoever Joyboy was such a prominent figure in whatever rebellion or whatever war took place that they didn't want his name even being mentioned in this present day, because of his connection to Nika, and because possibly his connection to the ancient weapons and to what he stood for. And we see this, and what I'm assuming is Joyboy at this part. This is more a little theoretical, but when we are in the reverie and we are introduced to Emu for the first time, we see Emu in this room, this frozen room, with a giant straw hat holding a picture of Luffy. What I'm assuming is that was Joyboy's hat, and Emu has it for a reason. I'm gonna get there. I have a lot of theories regarding that. But there's also evidence that Joyboy could connect to the Will of D, because of the connection of the mythical Zoan fruits, where Zoans have a mind, have a will of their own. I talked about more of my theory on the Will of D earlier. I still think that it is a very strong possibility that members of the Will of D were part of that kingdom, that these people in that kingdom were so bent on not giving up, on to continue moving forward, to pass things on to the next generation, that it's kind of manifested in this Will of D that people are afraid of, or the government is afraid of. So they want to cover it up, even to the point where they were wanting to take the middle initial D out of Luffy's name because they didn't want anybody to know. That's why Law has hidden it for so long. That's why, they don't want people to know who members of the Will of D are, because of some sort of connection, because of some sort of threat they pose to the government. The biggest threat to the government as of right now is this connection to the Void Century, the blank history, what that kingdom was, what it stood for, what weapons it had, and they don't want that resurfacing. So I'm kind of on a limb here, but I think Joyboy was a member of the Will of D when he lived, and because of Nika, that will has been passed down. I have a theory about that. I know Luffy was born before he got the fruit, so of course it's a little separate. I have a theory about why Nika ended up with Luffy. I'm gonna get there. I'm kind of all over the place. There's a lot of notes, but this is kind of what we can garner about Joyboy. And evidence suggests that Joyboy is the one who led the ancient weapons 800 years ago. And the ancient weapons are awaiting one who will lead them again. In Fishman Island, it suggests that this person is Joyboy, or rather the new returned Joyboy, which would be Luffy. We also know for a fact that Joyboy's treasure was found on Laugh-Tale. That's what started the One Piece in general. That's what Roger found on Laugh-Tale, and they laughed. I still don't know why they laughed, but he laughed on seeing it, and he wished he could have met Joyboy in this day and age. And there's a lot to think about with seeing Roger saying that they were too early, it wasn't time yet, which it's a pea-brain theory. I have another theory, but could the last ancient weapon be hidden on Laugh-Tale? And that's part of the treasure, not the whole treasure, but that's part of the treasure. And they were able to find out more about Joyboy. They were able to find out more about what was happening. They learned the truth. So obviously there's something there that showed them the truth. If it's the last ancient weapon, then there's a reason they could have been laughing and say, oh, we were too early. If only we could have lived in your time. I don't know why it would make them laugh, but I mean, that's a possibility. I have another theory on where the last ancient weapon is, but that's a possibility. I'm gonna get to that in a second, because yes, the ancient weapons are tied up in all of this. I just know they have something to do with Joyboy and Nika and Luffy. I just know that it's all connected. But yes, the truth of the Void Century rests on Laugh-Tale and on the poneglyphs that were passed down and written by members of the Kozuki family. Wano, therefore, has a strong connection to Joyboy like Fishman Island does, because Wano is where another ancient weapon is resting under the surface. And in the future war, like that, there was something that suggested a future war. There was something that suggested that there was a specific time when Joyboy would return, and that's why Odin wanted to ensure Wano's borders would be open to welcome Joyboy in. 20 years in the future. Said 20 years in the future is exactly when Luffy shows up. So, I mean, the ancient weapons in Joyboy are very heavily connected with one another, and they're connected to certain places. We've seen hints of where these ancient weapons are. And then we know 2 ancient weapons, but we don't know the location of the last one. And the one resting in Wano is Pluton. The one in Fishman Island is Poseidon, Shirahoshi. So there's one left that nobody knows where it is and nobody knows what it is. But this ancient weapon is directly tied to Wano's borders opening and to Joyboy's return for this possibility of an upcoming war, and for Joyboy to use these weapons. Also, connecting the Will of D to Joyboy, members of the Will of D are known as the enemies of the god. We get that from Corazon, from Law's flashback in Dressrosa. Corazon has said that Will of D members are known as enemies of the gods. Now that could directly be referring to the celestial dragons who see themselves as gods, or since there are now actual gods in this world like Nika, and when I get to talking about Nika, I'm going to actually talk about all the types of gods there are in One Piece, because there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. And I probably missed some of them. I just hit like the highlights of them. But that could refer to perhaps the world government, the celestial dragons, the five elders, and Emu. Perhaps they have to go up against some sort of the gods themselves, but that wouldn't quite, that's a little counterintuitive because of the information we have, because Luffy would then have a clash within himself being a sun god and then also being a member of the Will-O-Dee, so I don't really think that's a possibility, but I do think that there is going to be some conflict within Luffy because of Nika. As a possibility, I don't know, but the fact that the Will-O-Dee members are enemies of the gods, and we have this setup, this political setup of these people who think that they are, when in fact there are other gods that exist in this world, it's very fascinating to me. But if Joyboy, like I mentioned earlier, if Joyboy was a member of the Will-O-Dee, and that kind of tracks with how he's kind of been hidden through history, how they don't want him to be back, how they're trying to cover up all of the existence of the kingdom and him, and they're wanting to get the weapons for themselves so he doesn't use them, perhaps. So it would make sense to say that Joyboy is this kind of ultimate enemy of the gods, ultimate enemy of the world government. He's the enemy of the gods of this world. Because of that, is set to fight against Emu at the very end. He will be set to fight against Emu as the warrior of liberation, to destroy the corruption of the world government, uncover the void century, and create a free world for everyone to live in. That's kind of the framework of what we know about Joyboy. And now, let's talk about the second part of this, Luffy. Who is Luffy? Because his personality, his feats, everything that he stands for is a direct correlation to both Joyboy and Nika. And he's standing at like the precipice, right in the middle of everything. So, who is Luffy? He is obviously a pirate who wants to be king of the pirates. And Luffy is also the embodiment of freedom. He will always fight to liberate those who are enslaved or in unfortunate circumstances. We have seen this from the very beginning of One Piece. And I kind of made a timeline here. Not timeline, just a little list. Just of his crew alone, how he has liberated his crew one way or another. He freed Zoro from being executed, freed him to pursue his dream, and Zoro followed Luffy. He freed Usopp from the mindset of being stuck in place, from the mindset of being only a liar. He freed Usopp from that village where he was stuck, where he couldn't leave. And honestly, he freed Usopp physically by getting Usopp on his ship and taking him with him, he also, in a sense, liberated Usopp from his mindset of being weak. We saw it when Luffy stood by him when he fought against Kuro, but also we see it when people say Usopp truly joined the crew in Water 7 and then throughout Enies Lobby and post Enies Lobby, where Luffy has that fight against Usopp, and Usopp proves himself to be anything but weak, all the way fighting through Enies Lobby to joining back up and post Enies Lobby. Luffy freed Usopp from that mindset that he was dead weight, that he was a burden, that he was nothing but weak. Luffy helped him do that, and he inspired Usopp to pursue his dream to be a brave warrior of the sea. He freed and liberated Usopp from a lot of things. He frees Sanji. What doesn't he free Sanji from? Golly. First of all, he freed Sanji from being in a mindset that he had to repay his life and give up on his dream. That's where he was at when we first met him in Baratier, and Luffy kind of freed him from that. We see Sanji talk about his dream for the first time in what seems to be a long time, which is why Zeph gets emotional and tells Sanji to go. Luffy frees him from that and allows Sanji to come aboard to pursue that dream. And in Whole Cake Island, what doesn't he free Sanji from? He frees him from his family abuse, his trauma, the mindset that he's worthless, that he's got to be this sacrifice. I've already talked about this so many times. He frees Sanji from his past. He frees him from death. He frees him from the bonds of his family, his bonds of self-sacrifice, just everything. He frees Sanji from everything and allows Sanji to live freely on his ship by saying, I can't do this without you. Giving Sanji a feeling of self-worth for first time in a long time. He frees Sanji from a lot. I'm not gonna spiral. I'm trying to stay focused. He frees Nami from Arlong. She was pretty much a slave to Arlong at that point, and he frees her from that enslavement, that captivity, those bonds, and the trauma and the hurt that she had deep inside. By allowing her to ask for help, he has freed her. And he lets her live freely to pursue her dream. He freed Chopper from his past of thinking he was a monster, that humans were always going to hate him, that no one would ever accept him. He freed Chopper from that and lets him come along to pursue his dream. Are you seeing a theme here? Because there's pretty much there's a common thread. He frees Robin from the chains of her past, allowing her to live in a safe place with people around her who are going to stand up for her, to fight for her and protect her. He frees her from the feeling that she's going to be abandoned. She's now with people who would never abandon her. And he allows her to pursue her dream with the encouragement of support behind her, that she doesn't have to worry about it. He frees Brooke from the loneliness and fear of dying alone. Again, he frees Brooke from that solitude and allows Brooke to start dreaming again. And that dream to find Laboon is revived because of Luffy. And he ends up freeing Jinbei from, one, being under Big Mom's control, because he's given Jinbei another purpose. And he, in a sense, frees Jinbei from his responsibility from under the Sun Pirates, because even the Sun Pirates were telling Jinbei, like, you've always done this for us. You've always put your wants and needs aside to look after us. Now it's time for you to do what you want. And because Luffy was there, Jinbei is able to be free to what he wants to do, and he is freely able to join Luffy's crew. And that's just the crew. Like, he's freed and liberated his entire crew, and he's given them absolute freedom to pursue their dreams, to follow him along. And while they are doing that, they're all still pursuing their dreams. Their number one priority through all of this has become Luffy. Because of the way he has freed them, because of the way he gives them the choice to do what they want, they put him first. It's beautiful to see. But his crew is not the only one that he's freed or liberated. I mean, let's just go down the line here. He freed and liberated Alabasta for Vivi. He freed and liberated Skypia for Conus and Isa, and for the LeBlanc family, to prove no one wasn't a liar. He declared war on the world government for Robin. He overthrew a warlord for Brooke and for the ones who lost their shadows. He punched a celestial dragon because Hachi was persecuted against, despite knowing the consequences. He infiltrated Impel Down, a world government stronghold, to save his brother and free the majority of the prisoners, with help of others, of course. Nod to Buggy, he was there. He crashed into Marineford, another world government stronghold, to free Ace, and he fought against the government's wishes. While that one didn't end in Luffy's victory, he gained a lot from it. He saved Fishman Island for Shirahoshi. He freed the kids on Punk Hazard because Nami asked him to. He defeated Doflamingo on Dressrosa, for Law, for Rebecca, for, oh my gosh, for all of the citizens on Dressrosa. And something Luffy says there is so crucial to who he is and what he stands for. I'm gonna mention it in a second because I still got a list to go down. His crew in his place saved the island of Zou and freed them and helped them. He saved Sanji from Whole Cake. And in a sense, I think he kind of freed Katakuri from his mindset and what he thought about himself, because Katakuri gained a lot of respect for Luffy. I'm just saying. And he liberated and freed Wano, for the samurai, for Momo, for Tama, literally for everybody who was enslaved there. He liberated and freed them all. That's just like a broad variety of what Luffy has done. Luffy does not stand by when people are suffering. He cannot stand by while they are in pain, while they are hurting, and while they are being persecuted against. He will always protect people's freedoms, and he will always fight for them. And this is where that thing that he says to Doflamingo and Dressrosa is so critical to who he is. When he's fighting Doflamingo and he's delivering one of the final blows, and he's just screaming at him, he's saying, oh, of course, now that I'm thinking about it, I can't think of exactly what he says. And he's like, what you're doing, it's suffocating me. It is suffocating me. This world that you're creating, this place that you've created, is not free, and it's suffocating me. He can't be suffocated by some. I love that line, because that's so crucial to what Luffy stands for and what he's up against. He will not allow himself to be stifled, to be suffocated. He will not allow other people's freedoms to be stifled or suffocated from them. He will fight to liberate them so they can breathe freely, so they can act freely, so they can eat as much as they want whenever they want. He will fight tooth and nail for anybody's freedom. And because he is so willing to do that, so ready to do that for anybody he deems a friend, for anyone he deems, not even just friend, deems a comrade, deems someone that he wants to fight for, because he does that, people see him as a hero. They see him as a hero who does all these things. And yes, he is super heroic. He is a hero in his own right, but he doesn't want to be a hero. He doesn't want to be a hero because he doesn't want to do good things. Like, his heroes do good things, and he doesn't want to share his food or anything like that. But he doesn't want to be a hero. So one could call him a warrior of liberation instead. I mean, it fits. It fits so naturally. Like, he doesn't want to be a hero, so he's a warrior instead. Luffy is the embodiment of freedom, and he's a warrior of liberation. So how does this play into who he is? So Luffy unintentionally ate a devil fruit that Shanks had. Shanks knew that a devil fruit was eaten, and he decided Luffy, for more than one reason, was worth keeping alive at any cost, which is why he was so willing to give up his arm for Luffy, because Shanks, I believe, saw Luffy's potential and who he could turn out to be, and because of already who he was, for 3 reasons. 1, Shanks knew exactly what fruit Luffy ate. He knew that was Nika's fruit, and Luffy ate it, and he had some hope for that. 2, Luffy has the exact same dream Roger did, and I think that dream plays into this a whole lot because of the idea of freedom and being free from things. I think that is going to be play. I think that's going to be a major play later on. But yes, he had the same dream Roger did, and Luffy's personality and what he stands for. Luffy is a carefree, happy person who always makes other people smile or laugh. Like, he's always making people laugh. He's always making people smile. Even as readers, we are always smiling and laughing with Luffy. He's goofy, but he has an emotional understanding of others that is next to none in this story. It is top-tiered and unrivaled because of just how in tune he is with other people and their feelings, what they're truly feeling inside, even if they're not voicing it. He is able to see the heart of the issue really fast, and is able to inspire others to make the decision that they need to make. And Luffy, as he says, has always been free. Luffy has always been free. And he has a lot of growth in this story. This growth comes from loss. We see it in anytime he loses a fight, he always comes back. Like, he bounces back from it and learns from it and tries again. He doesn't ever give up. One of his biggest losses that inspired a lot of his growth was, of course, with Ace. That loss helped him grow, and it also helped him realize that to be free, to be truly free like he wants to be, and to protect the ones he loves and wants with him to complete his dream, he has to be strong enough to make it happen. And he has to be strong enough to pursue this dream, which is what leads him to, you know, making that decision to having the 2 years apart so everybody can train and grow on their own, because he has to be stronger if he's going to continue to be as free as he wants to be, and if he's going to continue to protect those he loves. Luffy also has a way to inspire everybody around him and gather people to him, even people that shouldn't be inspired by him. We've seen it with Aokiji, we've seen it with Fujitora and Dressrosa. Oh my goodness, that still hits me really hard. We see it with the people he befriends. We see it even with enemies grow to have a certain, well, most of them grow to have a certain respect for Luffy by the time they're done. Not all of them do, but a lot of them are. I mean, and we see it, like, he inspires his crew in the places he goes. He inspires people wherever he goes, whether it's in prison, in a town, in a kingdom, wherever. He inspires others. That's the reason he has an entire fleet behind him now, an entire division behind him of people who are rooting for him and will fight for him in the blink of an eye. We saw it in Marineford and gathering people who normally wouldn't care, fighting for Luffy. We see him get to go with Whitebeard, and Whitebeard decides Luffy's worth fighting for. We see it all the time with Luffy. At this point in time, royalty from kingdoms back him up. The Revolutionary Army is gonna back him up. He has, from Sabo to Ivankov to Dragon. He's never met Dragon, but you know, he's there. I mean, he's got actual connections from people there who will fight for him. His crew obviously is gonna fight for him. His fleet will fight for him. Former warlords. Crocodile fought for Luffy in Marineford. I mean, Crocodile wanted to smoke with everybody in Marineford, but still, he decided siding with Luffy was the better thing to do. I'm just saying. I mean, even Boa's gonna side with Luffy, obviously. You have that, and then you have emperors kind of on Luffy's side, but maybe not. Like Shanks, we don't really know where he stands at this point. But you also have Law. Law, as much as he tries to deny it, he and Luffy are great friends. Law will do anything for Luffy. He never backs down, he never quits, and that tenacity has grown a large number of people that support him and rally about him. Even people in the Marines, like Fujitora has a great respect for Luffy. Aokiji, to an extent, had a respect for Luffy. Garp, obviously, that's his grandson. And I think, if Luffy ever asked Garp to help him, if Luffy was in trouble and Garp was there, like at a Marineford situation, like if Luffy would turn to Garp and say, I want you to help me, I don't know if Luffy ever would, but if he did, Garp would. Garp would in an instant. Honestly, I don't even know if Luffy would have to ask at this point, because Garp probably has a lot of like resentment for Ace and what happened with Ace. So if he thought Luffy was in that much trouble, he might just come to Luffy's aid. We also know Kobe is a ride or die for Luffy, as much as they're against each other. Kobe loves Luffy. So, I mean, he's got some people even in the Marines who respect him. And it's just so interesting to see how charismatic he is unintentionally. Because he's not intentionally trying to gather people at his side, it just happens. And that natural joy, that inspiring place where he has so many people rally behind him ready to fight at any given notice, sounds like the perfect setup for a war. One final note about Luffy that I think is going to tie in really well with Joyboy and Nika is this idea that because Luffy never quits, he will get things done right then and there. We've seen it happen before, and we see it specifically in Wano. I mean, it can be highlighted in many, many different arcs, but in Wano specifically, it's highlighted in the difference between him and Ace and their promises to Tama. When Ace meets Tama, he promises that the next time when he comes back, then Wano will be free. That's what Ace had promised Tama. And I'm not dissing Ace. I'm not saying Ace was wrong for that promise. I'm just showing the difference in that promise. But when Luffy makes that promise to Tama, he says, by the time I leave, Wano will be free. That is such a stark difference, but it highlights perfectly who Luffy is and what he stands for and what he's willing to fight for. I think that really hits the nail on the head of what type of person Luffy is and what he's willing to do and the links of what he's willing to go through for someone he's decided to fight for. Because it's not a, we'll do this later. It's a, I'm gonna do this right now regardless. I really like that. So, we've talked about the groundwork of Joyboy, and now we've kind of laid the groundwork of Luffy, so now we need to lay the groundwork of Nika. This is the one that I have the least information about because Nika is still very new in the story. We've just been introduced to Nika, but I have a lot of theories. I did a little bit of research. It could be very wrong. It's very possible. But I have some theories on Nika. Nika, as stated before, he's the sun god. He's a warrior of liberation. He brings joy to others and makes people laugh. He's the embodiment of freedom and liberation, and he has the most ridiculous power in the world and fights in whatever way he fancies. I'm just going to mention this now. I'm going to get into it later. Zoan fruits have a will of their own. The government stated that, and this fruit has avoided the world government for 800 years. That's a very, very important detail that I'm going to get into in just a minute. But before then, because so little is known about this devil fruit and what it pertains to, it's hard to gather a lot of hard information, but because of its existence, we can kind of garner some information, grants us like a little bit of speculation on what could possibly exist about other mythical Zoan fruits in this universe. There could be a moon god, an exact opposite to Luffy. There could be other sun gods, because there are many different sun gods that are represented by different cultures. They stand for different things, they look like different things, so there could possibly be multiple sun gods. And because of that, there also could mean that there's other types of gods from mythology, like god of the underworld, god of love, which might be tied to Boa, just saying, you know, the whole Mara fruit. But that's a pea-brain theory. I don't think that's what her power is. Unless that's why Blackbeard's after it. I don't know. I think this kind of highlights a very important section of One Piece because there are a lot of other types of gods in this world that have already been established, and other hints at it at least. In Skypiea, you have Shandora and the gods that they were praying to before no one got there. You had a land, a sun, forest, and rain. Those were the four mentioned. You also, which means that Nika could be the embodiment of the sun god of the sky people. We also have a mention of gods with Alabasta and their guardian gods in Pell and Chaka. which I read, they're said to represent Horus and Anubis, which are, I believe, Egyptian gods. That Horus represent kingship, healing, protection, the sun, and the sky, and is represented by a falcon. Horus is very interesting because of a connection to something I'm about to make it up. Because of a deeper connection with Horus being another type of sun god in a sense. And then you have Anubis, which was the god of the care of the dead, pretty much the god of the dead and funeral rites, and is represented by a jackal. We also see cults from the island that Brook was held in Namakura Island, that worship the devil after Kuma sent Brook there. So we've seen other people representing both gods and devils, so that dynamic exists. Obviously, the most obvious one is the celestial dragons that consider themselves gods. You have the Lunarians, which we found out with King, and further on, the Lunarians are said to have a connection to the kingdom of the gods that were on the red line before the world government was there. And also, there's an additional connection to gods of mythology through the ancient weapons. So Poseidon, obviously, is a no-brainer. Poseidon is the god of the sea and the water, and is represented through Shirahoshi, this mermaid princess. This Pluton weapon is a play on Pluto, the god of the dead, lord of the underworld, and is said to be this battleship, which is what Frankie used to have the blueprints of. It is curious that Pluton, this battleship that is a kind of representation of the god of the underworld, is hidden under Wano at the moment. The last one is Uranus, or Uranos, which was known as the primordial god of the heavens, the sky, and the air. And its location and identity is unknown. I'm thinking, because of what this last ancient weapon possibly represents, we could be going back to the sky. Or it could be held somewhere that's in direct opposite of what it's known to be, so it could be underground. You know, like in a hole created by the world government that happened to have, you know, this stronghold positioned over it called Eni's Lobby, and there's just this random hole that goes down into nothingness. Wonder what could be there. That could be a possibility of where it is. It could also be up in the sky on a different sky island, because Skypia is not the only sky island that exists. It could be hidden up in the sky. Getting back to this idea of gods popping up in One Piece, they pop up everywhere throughout the story of One Piece. Why? There is a common thread that are going through them that should connect to something, and it should be able to give us a hint about something, or to give us answers. I haven't quite figured that part out yet, but that's kind of, I'm positioning myself around that at the moment. Back to Nika, sun god, warrior of liberation. If he is a warrior of liberation, there must have been something the warrior fought against to liberate something or someone, tied to the blank history, the void century. Perhaps this meant that one of his opponents, another god fruit user, let's say, was a conqueror of enslavement, of captivity, possibly Emu. And so these two that have opposite mind points, opposite viewpoints, clashed against each other. There are many possibilities of Nika's true nature, his lore that could be taken, like Oda might have been able to take like a sun god from mythology here and use it as like a basis for Luffy and for Nika. There's a couple possibilities, but I really honed in on one that has some connections to Luffy and his journey and possibly Nika's journey. So I'm going to talk about one mythological sun god that might give us at least some clues to Nika and to maybe more of Luffy and how Luffy's fight with Emu is gonna turn out. And that is Ra, the Egyptian sun god. There's a lot about Ra that I was reading that could potentially tie Luffy to him. I'm pulling up my sources. So there are some initial ties to Horus, as Ra, as Horus and Ra have kind of become a little bit synonymous. It's still a little fuzzy in my mind, but Ra was the original sun god and Horus came later, and he kind of merged with Horus to make a morning sun god, and he merged with others to make a noonday and an evening sun. So Horus is kind of a part of Ra, but separate at the same time. It's still a little confusing to me, but there are some ties from Ra to Horus that I thought was really interesting, and I can't say it as gracefully as the sources I read from, so I apologize for that. But I think it is interesting that there is a tie to Horus, and we have Luffy having this tie to the Horus of this world with Pell from Alabasta. There are 5 sections that the story of Ra is often divided into. We have Ra in the heavens, Ra on the earth, Ra in the netherworld, Ra as creator, and Ra as king and father of the king. Those are very interesting, very direct kind of sections that play into part of what Luffy's journey has been in a sense, and could possibly give us a hint as to what Luffy's journey could go to if I'm right. Again, this is all theory and speculation. I could be so far off base, and that's totally fine. I just thought this was interesting. So for the start of this, Ra was said to have gathered up the soul of the king and took him to paradise. I just thought that part was funny. The soul of the king, Soul King Brook. It's nothing. I know it's nothing. I just giggled at it. I just had a fun time with that. But he took him to paradise. And Ra was described as a supreme ruler, but he was also a comforter of newly arrived souls, and he was known as the embodiment of divine order and balance, which is an interesting little tidbit that can connect to Luffy and perhaps Luffy's ultimate dream, to have that ultimate balance and freedom of the world. Ra was also had a lot of power through Nika. I hope I'm saying this right. Please let me know if I'm pronouncing these right. I really don't want to be saying these wrong, but I think it's Nika, I believe is how you say it, Nika, which was both the god of magic and magic itself. But this divine force that magic was said to be was, I think, produced by Ra at first, and then he took control of it and used it to however he needed to. But it said, yeah, Ra created Nika and harnessed it, resulting in Hika's birth, who then maintained and controlled the magic afterwards. And this transformative power linked him to the sun that allowed for growth, which allowed growth. So this transformative magic power linked him to the sun that allowed for growth. That is a little bit similar to this transformative power that Luffy has in Nika that allowed him to grow and transform to fight however he wanted. This magic is represented by the devil fruit in this example. It could be a tie. I might be, all of this is reaching, let's be real. All of this is reaching, but this is what I found. And I thought it was interesting. We also have part of the story of Ra is that he left Earth and ascended to heaven, which could be a connection to how Luffy left Earth and ascended to Skypiea. He went to the Sky Islands. There's also a story of Hathor and Ra. Hathor being this eye of Ra, this goddess that is unleashed and destroys several people. Like, it's unleashed upon humanity and kills thousands upon thousands. And Ra, when he figures this out, he goes to confront Hathor and to kind of get her to change this, which is interesting, I think, because Hathor and Ra's story, if Nika perhaps had someone similar like that took the form and was given to somebody, maybe Emu, that could be setting up to a final battle again between Nika and Emu, Luffy and Emu. Hathor and Ra's story is really interesting because in the story, Ra begs her to stop. Hathor has lost all of her reason and continues to slaughter, and it says that because of her rage, she cannot hear his pleas to stop. Ra ends up basically getting Hathor drunk and making her pass out, and when she wakes up, she's fine. And she wakes as Hathor, who pledges herself as a friend to humanity henceforth. So I don't know how much that connects to maybe Luffy and Emu, but that could be like a little like hint of Luffy's gonna be begging Emu to stop, and I don't think it's gonna be making her drink until she becomes a friend of humanity, but it could be saying that there's only one, like, that could be leading to a confrontation between the two is what I'm trying to get at. I'm just not saying it very eloquently. We also have a possible ending of One Piece in an underworld setting because there is a few ties to the underworld with Anubis being the god of the dead. We have one of the ancient weapons being akin to a god of the dead. There's a few connections to the underworld that we are seeing, and with the possibility of whatever created that gaping hole above Enies Lobby being the same thing that, happened to Leloucia, could be leading somewhere like that is a possibility, especially because part of Ra's story takes him to the underworld where he's fighting a serpent, which he just fought a serpent in Kaido. The serpent is called Apophis. I'm gonna put the spelling right here. Please tell me if I'm saying this correctly.
Apophis.
Apophis. Okay, so the serpent's name is Apophis, and this serpent was trying to keep Ra in the underworld to prevent a sunrise, to prevent a dawn, if you will. And that was a major theme in Wano, where everybody was saying a dawn will surely come. They were in a night. This serpent was trying to prevent, Kaido, was trying to prevent this dawn from coming. Here comes Luffy, fighting off that serpent, leaving the underworld, and a dawn came. The sunrise came. There's also a section of the story with Ra as like this creator, and I'm not going to go into all the details of the story because it's very long, but one of the parts of the story that I found that was really interesting that could be a tie to Luffy's journey and perhaps Nika's journey, that the creation of all of this and all of these people had their different jobs and their delegations, and it says each of the gods was given their own sphere of influence so that order would be strictly maintained, and in today's parlance there would be no duplication of services. The gods would henceforth care for the people, and in gratitude the people would worship and obey the will of the gods. This relationship produced balance and harmony between the people, their gods, the earth, and the afterlife, all of which emanated from Ra. Freedom, perhaps, balance, as all things should be. It's very interesting that everybody has their role to play, and they played it willingly, and they did this because they wanted to. There was nothing that was overdone. It was all balanced, and everybody was happy. And seemingly, from what I read, could be interpreted as they were all free. Which, if we want to talk about Luffy's dream for a second, being king of the pirates, his real dream can only be attained after he is king of the pirates. He said that. So what is his real dream? If it's to do with freedom, if it could be perhaps freeing everyone in the world, which could seem like such an absurd idea that it could make people laugh, like I want everybody to be free. That is a childish ambition, but also a very sincere ambition, and this is a sincere dream that Luffy could make happen if he was king of the pirates, if he took down Emu, if he took down the world government. I'm not saying that's his dream, but I'm saying something similar to that, like in that fashion, could be a possibility. And for the last part of it, the Ra as king, what is interesting is that the king maintained order in this thing, and Luffy wanting to be king of the pirates, and then the king maintained order. We also got a nod to it with Zoro being king, in his fight against King when he's took Enma as king of the underworld. Again, another nod to the underworld, I'm just saying. So if Luffy reigns over everything, even though he doesn't want to reign over anything, he just wants to be the freest person in the world. If he were to stand at top, he would have his crew look after everything. Possibly. The king watches over and maintains order. It's just a possibility. I'm just saying. It could happen. But I just think it's very interesting that a lot of Ra's story, a lot of Ra's story kind of, you can pick certain parts of his story that is similar to Luffy's, or you're like, oh, well, that could possibly be a connection to this, or oh, that could be when Luffy did this, or oh, that could represent Luffy versus this person. It's very interesting, and I got into a rabbit hole with the whole mythology and all that. It was great. Spent way too much time on it because I just got off on little rabbit trails and forgot what I was doing originally, and then had to refocus, and so it was great. But I do think it's interesting that some of Ra's story kind of aligns with Luffy, which could in a sense align with Nika, because we don't know a lot about Nika. It could be a little foreshadowing to Nika perhaps, and who Nika was originally. But another part of the mythology that I did find interesting is that it could be a possibility of Luffy and Emu, their connection, their upcoming fight, their upcoming battle. I have 2 theories on that. Well, I have more than 2 theories. I have 2 possibilities, and I'll dive into them a little bit deeper in a second. But one is either Emu could possibly be another sun god. It could be an Apollo and Helios situation where one is overtaken by the other and only one is remembered. It could also, I think this is a more probable, would be a situation kind of like Apollo and Artemis, where you have the sun and the moon, and they are opposites, they have opposite goals, and they end up clashing. There's a caveat to that story with them being related, but that also goes into my theory. That also plays into one of my theories. So, it is possible. But, regarding Nika, and Nika being a zone fruit, what I was mentioning, kind of hinting at earlier, with the idea that Nika found Luffy in a sense because of the will, is just hear me out. If Nika was originally a sun god and Joyboy was originally a human, if the 2 came to some sort of agreement where Nika gave Joyboy his powers, manifested the devil fruit, Joyboy ate it, Nika resided in Joyboy from that moment on to be synonymous with one another through the devil fruit, so that Joyboy could fight against his enemies. I'm guessing Emu, because I have a theory that Emu was alive all the way back then. If he did that, but in their agreement they said only an inheritor, only someone who shares the same dream that we do, that shares the same ideals that we have set forth, only someone like that can get this fruit, can get your powers again. And in that fashion, that is why for 800 years the world government has never been able to get their hands on Nika's fruit, because Nika himself, since Zoans have a will of their own, a mind of their own, he has purposely avoided the world government and waited and bided his time for somebody who could be the inheritor of Joyboy's will, who could be what they were aiming for 800 years ago. Roger was not it, because it said, like, Roger, they were too early. It wasn't time yet. Nika must have known, because of all the clues Joyboy left on Laugh Tale and all of that, it all forms together. But that is why even when the fruit was captured, Shanks ended up with it. And then it so happened, even though It was put away in a chest. It so happened to be right near Luffy. And Luffy just happened to open it up and eat it. I think in a sense, Nika might have chosen Luffy. If Zoan fruits have a will of their own, Nika knew something. I mean, anything's possible at this point. We don't know. It could have just been a coincidence, but I think it might be a little bit more than that because of the whole, it happens 20 years in the future, regarding Wano, like Joyboy's return will be at this specific time. Nika must have known. Joyboy maybe knew. Maybe they knew somebody would come along at this specific time, and when that person came, Nika would be able to recognize who it would be and therefore would find him. Found Luffy and is now awakened in Luffy, which I think Nika, I don't have enough evidence to back this up yet, but I do think while Luffy is still Luffy in Gear 5 as Nika, I do believe Nika's gonna kind of influence Luffy, to put it lightly. And the reason I say this is because of some of his actions when he's fighting Kaido, the way, yes, it's still fully Luffy, but there are some of those smiles that he gives that isn't quite Luffy. if that makes any sense at all. Switching with Luffy versus Kaido, you see how that fight develops to what it was. Before I get further into the whole Nika thing, Luffy was so angry in Wano. He was angry from the get-go. It's the fastest I've seen Luffy get angry in an arc. The evolution of those smiles was so telling. I was right. It meant something. It definitely meant something. But like the evolution of how like just dark and deranged his smiles were and what they were becoming, it was just like almost unnerving. And like his laughter and the way his fights were evolving, how even Kaido sensed something was a little off, and then Luffy losing twice against Kaido, but he comes back every time, and then the CP0 backhanded win so that Kaido would defeat Luffy, even though that's not what Kaido wanted. And then Zunisha feeling Joyboy's return, Luffy having that transformation into Nika with the white hair and complete white outfit, which the difference, while yes, Luffy does say that's how he is when he's free. He says it when he's getting on Egghead when Bonnie asks him about it. Yes, Luffy's like, oh, that's what I look like when I'm free. Nika is the warrior of liberation. If Nika has freed Luffy from something, that even more plays into this idea that Nika is influencing Luffy in some manner. Like, the way his hockey is just, like, exploding. And I've watched part of it. I haven't watched all of it in the anime. I watched part of it in the anime. Just, like, how his hockey is just much more amplified and it's everywhere. And the way he looks, it's Luffy, but it's not Luffy. His freedom, his liberation in the moment, the way he fights Kaido, the silliness, the goofiness, the cartoon-like effect, and all of that. But then you also have Kaido in some parts asking who Luffy is. Like, Kaido looks at Luffy and says, who are you? Of course, Luffy's like, oh, I'm Monkey D. Luffy, I'm gonna be king of the pirates, but Kaido already knew that. Like, Kaido already knew Luffy. He was asking, who are you, to this other side of Luffy, this Nika side of Luffy. But I mean, like, Luffy fighting however he wanted. It's wacky, it's fun, you're laughing the entire time, it's just, you're grinning the entire time. It's perfect. It was a perfect fight. Kaido saying Joyboy was the one to defeat him, Luffy coming in and defeating Kaido, saying he's gonna create a land where his friends can eat whatever they want, or whenever they want. Again, showing that type of freedom, that liberation that Luffy has always strived for, Luffy's always fought for. And yes, Luffy ends the fight as Luffy. But y'all have to admit, there was something there. There was something else there. And I think it's Nika. I think Slowly, perhaps, the more Luffy uses Gear 5, the more Nika might kind of come in and influence him. I mean, if Nika can have the devil fruit, the Zoan fruit, avoid the world government for 800 years, there is a sense of control that he has over it. It would be, I don't know. I don't know. I think there's something there, though. I do think, with all of this said and done, we know who Joyboy is. We have the framework for Joyboy. We have the framework for who Luffy is. We have some ideas and thoughts on who Nika is and some possibilities of kind of his story and what he could be standing for, what he's going to do, where the story could end up with Luffy as Nika and Joyboy. The three are synonymous with each other as of right now, from what we know. Luffy is Joyboy, but he is also Nika. And I think that leads for a very interesting build-up to a final fight, because Joyboy is the enemy of the world. Nika is an enemy of the world. Luffy is an enemy of the world because he is a pirate, he's a member of the Willow D, he's an emperor now. Like, he is a major threat, just as Luffy. But then you add Joyboy and Nika on top of that, and it's like catastrophic level threat to the world government. That's where Luffy is right now. So what I think, with all of this being said, all my theories and conjectures about Nika and Luffy and Joyboy is, I think this is where all three of those are going to merge and connect to build up for the final fight. I think Luffy and Emu will be set up as opposites. I think Emu is going to end up being some sort of moon god, moon goddess, because I still believe Emu is a woman. I just feel like she's a woman. So I think Emu, if Emu represents a moon, perhaps moons are often tied to the ocean, which has a colder, darker meaning, and perhaps has a power that annihilates or enslaves others, which is the opposite of Joyboy, Nika, and Luffy. There is a thought that I had that maybe they are both sun gods of different sorts, and they're gonna have to battle it out to see which one will come out on top and which one will be like kind of absorbed into the other and forgotten. I don't know how well that one's gonna play out. I think the opposites is a higher chance. So I think Luffy is, well, I know Luffy is Nika, he is a sun god. I think Emu is gonna be a moon god, because Emu backwards is Umi, which y'all had pointed out to me when I first met Emu. Umi means the sea in Japanese, and the moon often controls the, not often, the moon controls the tides of the sea. The moon is connected to the ocean very, very strongly. So Emu, having that connection, could be a moon goddess. And on top of that, I think Luffy and Emu could be related in one of two ways. Either a mother and son dynamic, because we still don't know who Luffy's mom is. Caveat 2, Emu's real identity, which I will get to in a second. Or they are siblings by devil fruits. Not by blood, by devil fruits. So if Nika was a sun god, perhaps he had a sibling that was another moon god and a devil fruit, and they're siblings through their devil fruits. So that would kind of support the Apollo Artemis idea that I had earlier. So if Nika and this moon god were siblings, that would, in a sense, connect Luffy and Emu together as siblings through their devil fruits, which would be wild. There's also still a possibility that Luffy is Emu's son, and that Emu is Luffy's mom. There's also that. But my big thing about Emu is I think Emu was from Nika and Joyboy's original reign. She was there. I think Emu has the effects of Law's devil fruit that was put on her and made her immortal. I think she fought the original Joyboy and Nika and somehow won at the time and kept that straw hat and kept it locked away as a reminder. And if they are related in some form or fashion, it would make a little bit more sense of why she would keep a keepsake of said person, unless she just wants a trophy of whatever opponent she beat. That's also a possibility. And because she knows the devil fruit, because she knows Nika a little too well, she sent orders to obtain the devil fruit. She's always been trying to get this devil fruit back, and that's why she's always been wary of the ancient weapons, why all of that has to be taken care of, and everything has to be hushed up. Nobody can read it, nobody can know about the history, because nobody can know about Nika, nobody can know about Joyboy. That's where all of that could come into play, because it would make sense. It would make sense of how it was so consistently kept secret generation after generation after generation if somebody from that time stayed and kept it all hidden. But since Zoan fruits do have a mind of their own, Nika spent 800 years searching for someone to carry on the will of the original Joyboy, avoided Emu, bided his time, and was finally taken by pirates. Roger couldn't do it because it was too early, so Nika, and again, Nika must have known that. And I know Joyboy's treasure is related to this. I talked about it earlier. The One Piece is related to this. I just haven't figured out how. I just know it is because of how it's Nika's, or how it's Joyboy's treasure. I mean, it's all connected. It really is. But Luffy eating the fruit, the devil fruit, signified Nika's return, but a quiet, unawakened return, because Luffy didn't awaken his powers until just recently. So Nika still kind of got to slip under the radar and was hiding, though I'm sure like the elders and Emu knew because of the Gum Gum powers. They knew who Luffy could be, and that's why Luffy was such a threat to them. That's why they wanted to get Luffy as much as they could, because they're like, no, we can't let him become who we know he is. Again, since Luffy's powers have awakened, and because Zoans have a mind of their own, I think Nika is going to be slowly drawing Luffy towards Emu. I mean, we already see it now in the story, even if it's joking. And when they figure out that that Vivi is taken and Sabo is being accused of murdering Cobra, Luffy's like, well, let's go. Let's go to Mary Joy. Like, well, let's go to Mary Joy's. We're going to go there. We're going to get Vivi back. Even though that's not a good plan, even though that's, it's kind of played for laughs, he wants to go to where Emu is residing to get Vivi back. Of course, Vivi is the bait, but his mindset's there. And I knew it. I get it. It's a stretch. But we already see it happening where he's being driven towards Emu. And I think Nika is having a part of that. I think Nika is going to slowly push his way towards Emu to get that confrontation, to have that final fight. And I think Emu, because Emu is immortal, will have one weakness. There's got to be a caveat to the immortality technique, or perhaps in the 800 years, there's been a method of killing an immortal that's emerged, perhaps using the ancient weapons. I mean, the ancient weapons, anyone? And Luffy will use all three combined with Nika to kill Emu. That's my theory so far. That's where I'm at. I spent 5 or 6 hours concocting all of this and getting this done. But that's my theories. That's all of my theories up to this point about Luffy, Nika, and Joyboy. The three are so interconnected with one another. They are synonymous and almost one and the same as of right now in the story, and I'm curious to see how that is going to affect Luffy's behavior. I'm curious to see how that's going to lead up to the final fight. There is a possibility, because of all the connections we've seen so far, all the mentions of the different types of gods, there is a possibility that we're going to be going to the underworld perhaps at some point in time. That could be where the final ancient weapon is resting. It also could be leading us back to the sky. I'm really excited. I think it's going to be one or the other right now. We're either going to go to Sky Island or we're going to the underworld. And I don't know which one it's going to be, but I'm kind of excited to see if I'm even close to being right. This is a wild theory, and I don't know if Luffy has been modeled after Ra. I don't know if Nika was modeled after that. There are some similarities there. There's some similarities in other systems, but a lot of the mythology that I found that has some ties to what's happening with Luffy, and it could be leading up to something similar happening at the final battle. I'm excited. I'm excited. There's a lot going on. But that is my video. This was a lot longer than I thought it was gonna be, but I was invested. I was invested in the theory. So I hope y'all enjoyed this. It's a lot of wild guesses, a lot of conjecture, but you know what? I had fun with it. And if I even get like a fraction of this correct, if even a fraction of it comes true, I will be celebrating. Because that would be bonkers. That would be insane to think about. But what are your theories concerning Joyboy, Nika, and Luffy? I would love to hear some of your theories. If y'all have done even more research regarding like mythology and different types of sun gods that exist in mythology, let me know down below. I would love to have conversations about it. I still have a lot of faith that those three, Joyboy, Nika, and Luffy, is going to be tied directly to the Will of D, to the ancient weapons, to the First Kingdom, and the Void History blank, or Void Century blank history, into the ancient weapons. I just know it all connects together, and it's gonna end up connecting directly to the One Piece as well. I still have like full faith in myself that all of those are connected together, and I think it's through Nika and Joyboy, and now Luffy. What are your thoughts on this video? Are y'all excited to see how the final fight, this final war, is going to be building up? Because I am so anxious, nervous, and excited to see this confrontation between Luffy and Inu. If it happens, I'm hoping it will. I think it will. That seems to be where we're leading. But let me know what your thoughts are down below. Let me know what y'all's conjectures are, what y'all's thoughts and theories are regarding anything. Just please no spoilers from Egghead down in the comments below, because I'm still going through it. So besides most of Egghead, put your theories down below. Other than that, thank you all so much for watching this video. If you haven't already, go check out my Zoro versus King fight analysis that I did. I posted that on Tuesday. Last week I did Sanji versus Queen and my Egghead review. So if you haven't watched those videos, please go do that as well. Other than that, thank you so much for sitting through this theory video. It's a long one, I know it is, I'm sorry. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed my pea brain thoughts, because it was fun for me to do. It was fun to theorize at this point, because I'm so close to being caught up with the rest of y'all. It's very exciting. Next week, I will be doing a video over Robin and Maria's fight, and then I will be doing another Egghead review, so be on the lookout for those coming next week. Again, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time, scholars. Bye!